Another game review video here on the Silverbird Selection. Today I'm looking at a 1988 Silverbird packaging release, Video Classics. Pretty uncommon game to find out there. My copy cost £3.50, so let's waste no more time and take a look at it. Here we have the packaging then. It's typical Silverbird affair. The logo at the top, Video Classics, is pretty bland looking, but I do like the fact that they've taken the I from Classics and made it the O from Video. That's quite nicely done. And I also like this artwork, although it's fairly simplistic. You can see some asteroids and there's a what looks like a sun or a star in the middle. That's actually meant to represent the ball from the game. And you've got two table tennis bats, but they've actually got thrusters on them like the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek. So quite a nice idea. It's not the most well drawn image, but I still think it's quite nice. Quite a nice idea. So they've got the Video Classics logo on the spine, of course, and then the usual 4 screenshots, which if we zoom in we can see it's Pong or various variants of Pong. But if you look closely, the top right and the bottom left screenshots are exactly the same, so that's a bit lazy from the people putting the cover together. And at the bottom there it says 4 classics and 2 new ones brought Blip up to date. And the word Blip is relevant in particular, which we'll get into in due course. So taking a look inside the packaging, and we've got the advert for other Silverbird titles forthcoming. But what's interesting to note here is a game here called Motocross Mania, and that looks like a Commodore 64 screenshot to me, but that game was never released, so I don't know if it's gone unreleased all this time or if it was released by another company, but it never came out in the Silverbird packaging. And also at the bottom there we've got International Speedway, but also a game that's been described as Billboard, but that was actually released as Pasteman Pat, which I reviewed a couple of weeks ago and is absolutely awful. So then moving on to the instructions themselves, we've got Video Classics copyright Pagoda Software. It gives a little introduction talking about the old Pong consoles, basically black and white displays that went blip. 1 or 2 players were known to sit in front of their tellies for hours. But it says now it's 1988 and you can enjoy these days once more, revitalised with new graphics, sound and colour, and a couple of games you've never seen, 4-Bat Blip and Asteroids. Now you've seen the word Blip several times in these instructions already now, and the reason for that will become clear when the game loads. Got some loading instructions as well, and also some basic gameplay instructions. It's basically just using a joystick to control the bat in the various games. Also in the instructions it comes with a booklet, which I'll show there, and that's just got all the instructions in different foreign languages. We just unfold it there, you can see we've got it in French and Italian and stuff like that. So not seen that in any of the other packages so far, so I don't know if that's unique to this one or just that this booklet's got lost to the midst of time with most of them. Okay, so pretty typical for these Silverbird releases, we've got a boring text-based loading screen. You can see it says now loading with spider load, Blip Video Classics, and this is another hint that the game wasn't originally called just Video Classics. And it's also got a scrolling message across the bottom, which is advertising the fact that you get 6 games for the price of 1 or something along those lines. It's quite a slow-moving text message, which I can't really be bothered to read out to you, so we'll just let it scroll for a moment or two, and then we'll go to the actual gameplay stuff. So when the game loads, you can see here is the title screen, which quite clearly says Blip. Actually it's not that clear, it's sort of at a funny isometric angle, but it does say Blip, and that's because the game was obviously originally called Blip and then renamed Video Classics when Silverbird released it. I think in this case that was probably a good idea because Blip's a very sort of abstract name for a game, whereas Video Classics makes it pretty clear. So you can also hear some music in the background. Quite slow pace with a heavy bass line. So once you press the fire button you go to the title screen and you can see a choice of 6 different games. Most of which are the common games you would have got on a Pong system back in the mid to late 70s. Tennis, football, squash and solo squash. And then there's 2 other games, 4-Bat Blip and Asteroids. So what we're going to do is go through each of those games. I'm not going to play a full game of each because the video would go on forever. I'm going to show a little demonstration of each game mode and then we'll do the review scores obviously at the end. A couple other things to mention about the title screen: you can choose from 1 or 2 players. if you play one player, then you're playing against the computer in everything but solo squash, I would assume. And the copyright information at the bottom there, 1988 Pagoda Software, designed by Jazz Daniels and Tom Lanigan. So let's make a start with the tennis game. Okay, so when you start the game, it's classic Pong. It's bat versus bat on a plain background, and the goal is the whole side of each side of the pitch, I suppose you'd call it. As you can see, the graphics have been enhanced somewhat from the original Pong. You've got some detail on the bats and a sort of weird scrolling background, which is a bit of an interesting choice. Also, what's different from normal Pong is that you can move forwards right to the middle of the screen like you could in a normal game of tennis, I guess. Although there's no line to denote a net in this version of the game. So pretty straightforward Pong game. So you press fire to start, and the ball moves around and you try and get it past your opponent. Well, obviously you can move forward to try and, I guess, narrow the angle somewhat. Now the problem with playing against the computer is that they manage to return pretty much every shot unless you get it at a really tight angle, which diverts it quite far there. He's got a shot back against me there. So you don't get the human error of playing against a human opponent. They pretty much return every shot, which makes it quite difficult. So the only other thing to note about it is you don't score points like you did in the original Pong. The original Pong games generally, I think, went up to 15 points. The first to 15 would win. In this version of the game, you've got a time limit, which you can see ticking down in the middle of the screen, and then you score 10 points for every shot that you score. So ultimately, at the end of the game, you will end up with a number of points, and there is actually a high score table as well, which I might show on one of the games. I'm not going to play all of them through to completion because, as you can see, the timer goes on for quite a long time. Still got 6,000 odd time units to play through until the game ends. So graphics pretty straightforward. You can't do too much with a Pong game, but they obviously tried to modernise them to some extent, even though the gameplay is exactly as you expect, and it's pretty good representation of Pong. You know, I'm doing actually quite well here because this one's fairly straightforward. The other game modes, as you'll see, add more complexity, as you'd expect from the different game types that we're going to be looking at. So that's pretty much it for the Pong. I'm going to just quit out of this and go back to the menu and then start on the next game mode, which is the soccer or football version of the game. So back at the main menu, and next up we're going to play the football version of the game. And what happened when I went back to the menu is that the music restarted from the beginning, and you can hear that bass line in the background, but right now you can also hear some melody. Now what happens when the game starts, I didn't mention this when we're playing the normal tennis version, but I will now, is that the music resets and it plays that bass line, but that's all you get. You don't get any of the melody because it's using one of the channels of the SID chip for the in-game sounds, which are fairly limited bat and ball type sounds. So here we've got the soccer game. Again, you've got the weird scrolling background, this time in grey, blue border. This time you've just got the small goal to defend, and you've got two players. Now the back player, your goalkeeper, can't be moved around, but the front player can be moved backwards and forwards as with the tennis game. This one is very hard because firstly, the opposing computer player never moves their striker, if you want to call it that, and secondly, there's a very, very small goal to aim the ball into. It's very, very rare that you can get it past these two opposing things, although I just managed to do that handily. But you can see they return pretty much everything, and with two lines of defence as well. What you find is that you'll make a mistake before they do, or it does. So it's quite hard to score in this one. And moving the player forward doesn't really help a lot. Now in the original versions of Pong, what you could do is hit the ball with the furthest player back and then hit it into the front player, and that would re-divert the ball, but that doesn't happen in this version of the game. If you hit it from the back player through the front player, which is quite hard to do, what you'll find is it does nothing. It basically just goes straight through them at the same angle that it was already. So this isn't a very good version of the soccer version of the game. You can see there, it just went straight through with no no alteration to the direction of the ball. So yeah, this is not a very good version of that soccer Pong, and it's quite hard to beat the computer at this one. You'll make a mistake long before they do, as you can see, because I'm already 40 to 20 down. So yeah, that background tune, as I was mentioning, you just get that bass line, which is alright, but it's kind of boring without the melody. So I don't know if having the in-game music was really a great idea or not in this particular game. So that's probably enough of the soccer version. Let's move on back to the menu and try the next game mode, which is squash. Okay, then let's take a look at the squash game. And as you can see now, both players at one end of the pitch, if you want to call it that. It's got a nice red box around it, and not a moving background on this one. Again, you can move right up to the far end of the screen on this game mode. The opposing computer player never does that, they always stay at the back. And as you'd expect with squash, the idea is to hit it against the wall on the left hand side and stop your opponent from returning it. And again, movement of the bats is pretty much like the Pong game. And again, if you hit it at a good angle, it will usually get past the opposing player, although I'm not doing a very good job of that at the moment. Let's see if we can persevere with that. There we go, hopefully he won't get that one back now, there we go. And I quite like this game mode. I think it is quite frantic like a game of squash would be. And it's actually reasonably easy to get it past your opponent if you hit the ball at the right angle, although at the moment I'm not doing a very good demonstration of that. Most of the time I'm actually losing the points rather than winning them, and I've done that's what's happened again there. You do get quite a sort of trail left behind with the ball with this one because of the two lines that you can see, the sequence of blue lines in the background mean that you get quite a cool trail left behind by the ball. I'm not sure if you'll see that on the video, but it is pretty cool. And yeah, this one turns out to be quite a frantic game. Again, the computer doesn't miss a lot, but if you get the ball at the right angle, then you can get a few points on this one. So one of the better game modes, I would say, out of the original Pong style game modes. Now, I'm not going to play the solo squash on the screen because you can imagine exactly how that's going to be. You're basically playing against yourself, which could be quite embarrassing based on how well I'm playing these games at the moment. There we go, that was a good point at least. What I find the best approach to do is to just try and follow the ball every time, whether it's your shot or not. Well, again, there's probably not much more to show on that. It's Pong, you know what Pong's like, and probably don't need to bore you by playing through the whole game, although we are quite close to the end on this one. So perhaps I will play through to the end just to show the high score table, then I don't need to worry about showing you that on the other ones. Not that there's anything exciting to see on the high score table, but we may, since we're so close to the end now anyway, we may as well give it a go. I'm actually reasonably close to getting back into this one as well, so let's see how it goes. No, oh yeah, I managed to return that, that was amazing. Yeah, so I've got back to 60 each in terms of points. Oh, that was rubbish though. That bassline music in the background does get very boring. This is quite a good rally going on here. I'm not even sure whose turn it is, so I'm just trying to return everything. I did win that point. I'll stop that one dead. Nearly at the end now, they're just in the lead. I'm not sure I'll get a chance to get a point back here now. No, time's up. So you can see when the game ends, you do get... actually, because I lost, I don't get to put my name in the high score table, so you can see the opponent, the computer's got their score in the high score table. What's a bit odd is this high score table's got scores of 10 right down, apart from in fourth place is a score of 300 for some reason, so I'm not quite sure what happened there. So anyway, let's move on to 4-bat Blip. And as you can see, there are 4 bats as you'd expect. You control 2 of them, the one on the left and the one at the top, and the computer controls the other 2. And we've also got this really distracting blue sort of tartan background, which is quite horrible. I'm not quite sure why they chose that, but there you go. So if you miss a shot with the ball going past you either at the left or the top, then the computer gets the point. And the problem here is you can actually direct the shots past your own bat if you're not careful, which makes it very difficult to score against the computer. The computer misses virtually nothing in this game mode because of the 2 bats. So although I did actually get a point there, having said that. But I'll just play this for a little bit as well. The background is just vile on this one. It's all over the place, sort of swirling around these blue checkerboard effects. I'm actually winning this, having said it was hard. I'm actually winning this at the moment, but it won't continue that way, I'm sure. There you can see, I actually did it again there. I guess the aim of the game is to direct the bat against your other bat to beat the computer. And actually, I'm doing way better than I've ever done before on this game mode at the moment. Actually 50-10 up now. So this is quite a unique mode and therefore gives a bit of value to the package beyond the normal Pong games. I think with all these games what you'll probably see is that they'd be better as 2-player games, because the computer makes no human error, and human error is very much where these games come into their own and become competitive. Against the computer it is quite difficult, although as I've said I'm doing better on this one than I thought I would. But I think we've probably seen enough of that one as well, so we'll go back to the menu and play the last one, which is the Asteroids. I think that's how you say it, at least. Okay, so to finish things off, let's have a look at the 6th and final game mode, Asteroids. And as you can see, it's Pong. You can move forward again with the bat as well, but you've got asteroids bouncing around in the middle of the screen, and if the ball hits them, then it will rebound randomly. So sometimes it'll come straight back to you, or sometimes it'll divert it and go back towards the opponent. So let's see if we can see that in action. Oh, well, that wasn't a good start. There you go, see, you can see it rebounding off the asteroids. So you've really got to have your wits about you to see what happens, to take into account the bouncing of the ball against the asteroids. So quite a nice game idea, adds definitely another level of difficulty to it, and it's quite nice graphics on this as well. You've got sort of the galaxies and stars in the background and the asteroids rotating in the foreground as well, so that's quite cool. This is definitely the most interesting game mode out of all of them, and the most unique one. I do think they probably missed a trick not making the asteroids look like the asteroids from the game Asteroids, but I guess the solid look of the asteroids is quite nicely done, and definitely the best and most interesting graphics of the 6 game modes. Ultimately though, it does just play like Pong, but with more random factor of the ball bouncing off the asteroids. I don't think I'm going to play it through to completion because it's quite boring for you to watch. You can see already the game mechanics in action, so there's not really much more to see, but it does make for quite a frantic and interesting game at times. And also the computer is less skilled in this version of the game because they can't react to the rebounding of the ball from the asteroids. So with me 70-50 up, I think I'm going to call it a day at that point and reset back to the menu so you can hear some of the game music while I'm doing the review scores. So let's get on with those review scores. So packaging I thought was reasonably good, not great. I like the image on the front, but apart from that there's nothing remarkable about it. So I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. Presentation I think is pretty nice. You've got a good title screen, menu screen with lots of options, 1 and 2 player games, and obviously the 6 game modes. So presentation I'm going to go for 7. Graphics, I mean there's only so much you can do with a Pong game, but I think they've tried to make them a bit more interesting from one game to the other. Even so, I still think it's only worth a 6 out of 10 for the graphics. The sound in-game is pretty boring with the monotonous backing tune and the game sound effects are very basic, just the sort of typical Pong sounds. In the menu screen you have got better music, but even so I'm still only going to give the sound 5 out of 10. I was sort of, with the graphics and sound, sort of between 5 and 6 for both of them, so I decided to give one 6 and one 5 to sort of even it out. And finally, the playability, fairly varied, and I think it would be better against another human competitor rather than the computer. But it is only Pong after all, and it's fairly limited, so I'm going to give the playability 6 out of 10, which gives it an overall score of 6.6. I would say if you're a fan of Pong games, these are pretty reasonable interpretations of them, and I would say the fact that you've got 6 different game modes, if you could get a second player playing with you, definitely worth the $1.99 asking price. Against the computer, it's quite hard work and a little bit boring. So there you go, that's my review of Video Classics. Not a bad selection of Pong style games if you like those kind of things, basically. If you've got any thoughts about it, then let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now let's go back to Brody for another game choice. You join us once again in the kitchen, and a very relaxed Brody is waiting to choose another game for me. So the two game choices actually aren't games this time. They're utility programs. So we've got Ubix Music or the graphics editor. Not the most exciting games or software products to play, but they've got to be done at some point, so may as well get one out of the way. So I'm taking no chances this time. I've got treats in front, on top and behind the cassette boxes this time, so I'm sure we must have to knock one of them over first time around this time. So let's see how it goes. You ready, Brody? Excited? He's coming, he's going to take a look. He's taking the front ones. There's more. Have a sniff around. Oh, there we go. He's knocked over graphics editor, and now he's knocked over Ubix Music as well, but graphics editor fell first. So that means that next time around I'll be playing Ubix Music. Join me to play that game next time around, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.